This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Protect your internet by securing your connection and get up to 50% off by visiting proxpn.com and using the offer code VOICES. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to MacVoices. This is a talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this time we're going to delve a little bit farther into video production. We're talking to Sean Mullen of Rampant Design about his style effects. Sean, it's great to have you on MacVoices.
That's great to be here. Thanks, Chuck.
So, what is Rampant Design and what are style effects?
I'll answer that backwards. I guess style effects are drag and drop QuickTime-based effects that work in anything, Mac or PC, any editing software that can read a QuickTime. And they're basically organic elements that you drop onto your timeline, and you can add instantly change and add effects to your timeline. So light leaks, flares, fire, dust, explosions, animated mats, style mats, transitions, but the majority of our effects are organic, meaning we shoot them in camera. So it's not canned as in something you'd see like pre-recorded or pre-animated lens flares or something like that. These are all real. So if you want to add an organic effect to your timeline, you can instantly do that, and it works in everything. And then Rampant is our company, and we started it as a way to help anyone who makes video, from people who make YouTube films or people who just make home movies, all the way straight up to feature films. And we have clients on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, the client list you have on your website is pretty impressive. Probably, if not every major network, pretty much every major network and way beyond. So that speaks very well. And of course, in looking at your demo reel, I think there's some things in there that I think I recognize. It's one of those things like, they're the elements that you think are there, and they certainly add that extra production value, but you never really lock in and say, oh yeah, that was one of those.
Right.
Talk just a little bit, though, more about this, because this is not a Final Cut plugin or anything. No. This is, but it's also not stock footage.
Right. We're somewhere in between. We're not a plugin, meaning you don't have any sliders or you don't manipulate our elements in that fashion. But you sprinkle it on top. You don't take away from the piece. It's just if we were if we were chefs, we would be your salts, your different ingredients, your oregano, your spices, things like that. Our effects are designed to put on top and really take production value up a notch. Maybe your footage isn't so great, or maybe it is great. It works both ways. And it's just designed to help add a design sense to your design aesthetic to your video without any effort at all. And it's not a plugin. These are QuickTime movies, and it's not stock footage. These aren't generic. These are shot with a purpose. I've been a designer for 20 years. I've worked for Disney and Universal, and you name the companies. Or I've worked with Aaron Spelling. I've worked with a lot of major directors. So I'm not just shooting just to shoot. Everything has a purpose. And what's really great is when you see editors who get that on a major network, like, for example, America's Got Talent uses our stuff all the time, and when they use it and it blends as if it was shot in camera, it's just a wonderful thing, and it looks like it was actually captured in the shot.
So you're the salt and pepper. I love that analogy. So that means that you can take and use this. You don't have to be a Final Cut guy. You can use this right in QuickTime Player. You can use this in anything you already are editing with.
Yeah, most of our effects, except for our light effects, most of our effects have alpha channels. Our light effects, I will not put an alpha channel on light because light is not a solid. Light needs to blend. So for those who need a blend mode, it's really frustrating to see someone try to put an alpha channel on light, because it looks terrible. So I always insist that people blend it, and you'll get a much better look. But as long as you have blend modes, you can absolutely use everything. Otherwise, if you don't, you can use all of our effects that have alpha channels.
Okay, so I'll let you pick whether the host program, but walk us through exactly how you would put it in, whether it's Final Cut or iMovie or QuickTime or whatever.
Sure. Final Cut and Premiere are both pretty similar. So you have your timeline, and you take one of our effects. You find, let's say, you just find a light leak that you really love. You put it on top of your video. So let's say just call it layer 2. Let's say your edit is simple, and then you just change the blend mode. So you just change it from normal to screener to add. Those are the two common ones. You can also get a little bit crazy, do overlay or multiply, but it's that simple. So you just put the effect on top, switch the blend mode, and you're done.
That's great. That's great. And I have not used any of these yet, simply because I guess I'm more used to the plugin architecture where, okay, I have this effect, and like you say, light leaks or something that they're built. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. Are those plugins built differently than what you're doing?
It depends. Some light leak plugins are generating like fractals or mattes, or doing something else mathematic-based to give you what looks like a light leak. Ours are actual light leaks where we're doing various tricks and introducing light onto the sensor. So it's a real light leak. So when you put our effects on top of your timeline, it's going to look real because it is real.
Okay, that's an interesting look at it. So they're shot. I realize you just said this, but I think I'm finally picking it up, and I think the audience is too. That these are actual effects that blend with your timeline, as opposed to being inserted on top of or through artificial means. Right.
It's not a replacement for your plugins. It's an addition. We work really well with Video Copilot and Red Giant. This is by no means a reason to throw away your favorite plugins. It just works really well. And because our effects are organic, if you take your favorite particle system, for example, let's say a trapcode particular, you can put our real dust on top and mix that with trapcode, and all of a sudden you've got your dust that's doing exactly what you want mixed with real, and it adds to the realism of the shot. Or something even more similar or simple by just putting a real lens flare on top of a beauty shot. It looks like the lens flare was shot in camera, but it wasn't.
We're getting to the point that you can't trust what you're watching.
You should never believe what you see on television, ever.
Well, no, and in fact, as a matter of fact, I was watching an old movie last night, and watching the snow effect, and I'm sure it was probably just soap flakes being thrown down, because either that or something, something even less sophisticated. But now you're right. You can't really tell what it is that you're seeing, whether it was actually there or whether it was added in post.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a little a secret. The best snow is instant potatoes. That makes for the best snow on set. It doesn't taste good. It gets all over your clothing, but it makes for the best snow effect in camera.
So do you have snow effects that were shot with instant potatoes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is this something as unusual as it seems to be for me? Am I just new to this, or is this something unique? Because it seems like everywhere you go, there are plugins and all that kind of thing, but I haven't really run into this kind of organic thing.
It's interesting that this is a trend that is coming back. My mentors worked on the original Star Wars. I've worked in Hollywood for almost 20 years, and the people who taught me worked on some of the original visual effects and special effects films, and they did everything optically. There were no plugins 20 years ago to do any of these things, so they taught me their tricks, and I've mixed that with my bag of tricks. But I'll always try to do it real in camera before I ever try to do it in the box. I think trying to simulate nature is much more difficult than actually working with nature. But it's coming back. But the design trend is being realized by everybody, whether they're doing it in software or in camera. Everyone's realizing that light leaks and film flashes and real elements or even digital elements are important for filmmakers now, and for anyone who's making video. So it's funny that I've been doing this for 20 years, and we've always done it this way, and that was the trend 20 years ago, and now it's coming back. So it's very interesting that it's come full circle.
It's funny you would say that, because you look sometimes back at some of the older films and older TV shows, and you think, how did they do it with just film and camera, when we're so used to plugins and a non-linear editing system where you can rearrange things and tweak things, and it's sometimes it's just kind of amazing that the TV industry got off the ground the way it did.
It's impressive what they did with just grease pencils and physically cutting film, and it's pretty impressive what they got away with. And now things are so easy, it's really easy to do a complex effect nowadays.
Yeah. I'm sure you have your share of scars on your fingers from cutting film.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was able to cut film and actual video versus well before nonlinear became a thing. So I'm grateful for being right in the middle between digital and physical media.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Secure your internet with ProXPN. Do you lock your doors at night or when you're away from home? Pull the shades down or draw the drapes so that not everything in your life is on display? Of course you do. So why wouldn't you do that when you're surfing the web when you're away from home? Not to make you paranoid or anything, but identity theft, hacking, and just plain old nosiness is becoming more widespread. That's why you need ProXPN, whether you're across the street at your favorite coffee shop or across the planet on a business trip. Those free Wi-Fi hotspots are really tempting when you're away from home and trying to save on your cellular data. The trouble is that even if you do get a live internet connection, you don't know who's watching what you do and capturing that data for their own uses. Credit card transactions, bank account logins, email logins, all those carefully crafted passwords that you've been using. You are using carefully crafted passwords, right? They're all out there to be seen and appropriated. You want your online communications to be safe and secure. ProXPN's virtual private network service does that for you with a 2048-bit encryption key, a 512-bit encryption tunnel, and all sorts of other geeky stuff that amounts to a super secure connection to whatever you want to connect to. ProXPN takes the whole privacy thing very seriously. So seriously that they don't log your activity, even for a day. They take Bitcoin as payment, so if you're so inclined, you can be completely anonymous, even to them. And with server locations in Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, London, Amsterdam, and Singapore, ProXPN is a truly global operation, giving you the option to appear to outside parties to be coming from wherever you want to. Not sure ProXPN is for you? Set up a 100% free, no credit card required account right now at ProXPN and give it a try. Even better, if you use the code VOICES, you can get one of the premium accounts for up to 50% off. Surf safe and secure no matter where you are on your Mac, iPhone, or iPad with ProXPN at proxpn.com and do it for up to 50% off using the code VOICES. Secure your internet. Thanks to ProXPN for their support of MacVoices. You think something's being lost with all the effects and all the extras that we have now? I mean, I've often, and folks know on the show, I've talked to people who I think there's something to be said for giving all these tools to people so that they can tell their stories. But at the same time, from an artistic standpoint, is something being lost?
Well, it can be. I believe in keeping things simple. I believe in the story comes first. So if you're slapping a bunch of stuff on top to cover up something, or you don't know any better, that's fine. And over time, your craft hopefully will progress. But it really should come story first. I mean, remember when desktop publishing came out, there would be people who'd use 30 fonts in one project, you know? I mean, it was ridiculous, but it happened. Well, the same thing happens today in video, where I've got a million filters, so I definitely have to use them because I paid for them. Come on, you know? Eventually, I think you'll progress past that and start simplifying and really worry about the story and a specific design look that you're trying to use to help teach the story and not take away from it.
Nobody in this interview and nobody watching this ever used all those fonts. You know.
Never.
No, none of us. No, not at all. So that kind of takes me to where I wanted to go. With all these things to choose from, do you give folks any guidance on how to apply the salt and pepper properly and not over-season the steak?
I do. I've got probably 40 tutorials right now, and I've got a whole series called Ask Rampant, which shows people how to do these effects even without our effects, just how to do the effects that you see today, things like speed ramping and slicing type and just different editing tricks that you see nowadays that have nothing to do with Rampant. I teach a course on that called Ask Rampant. You can find that on our site. And it's just about here's the tools and here's the techniques. But every single tutorial I say, now, you don't have to go this far. This is an extreme example. Dial it back. You know, it's fine for certain things like promos and music videos. That's great. But if you're going to do all this crazy stuff in your film, save that for the title sequence. Let your film be your film unless it's important to the story. I always tell them to just dial it back, keep it simple, and focus on the story.
Let's talk about the training for a second.
Okay.
Is this primarily something for the style effects, or is this just video tutorials or video training in general?
Oh, that's the thing. I was taught everything I know. I was taught by people who came before me, so I feel very compelled to pay things forward. So we do have tutorials on how to use style effects because it needs to support our business. But we have a whole series of tutorials that have nothing to do with Rampant. It's just about techniques, tracking, how to use text properly in After Effects and Premiere and Final Cut. Just various editing techniques, speed ramping, matting, masking, and we release new tutorials all the time. That it's not how to use Rampant. It's really just how to step up your game as an editor or as a motion graphics artist.
And this is these are free?
Yeah, everything we offer is free. You can go to AskRampant.com or just go to our YouTube channel, and we have, I want to say, somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 or 70 tutorials, and it's in everything from Resolve to hit film to Premiere to Final Cut to motion. We have a little bit of everything. So because our audience is so diverse, we don't want to just focus on one app.
Very nice, very nice. I'm really anxious to play with these a little bit, especially now that I understand more what it is I'm looking at. I think everybody needs to approach it that way. I think to just look at it like another plugin, another plugin is probably a mistake, because sometimes the plugins can look really good, but like you said, sometimes they can look really, really just completely contrived.
Well, let's be honest. The thing about plugins is this: if it doesn't default to awesome, now you're on the clock to try to make it look good. So if you've done it before, you'll copy that setting from a previous project and you're good to go. But if you're sitting there making tweaks and you're finding yourself tweaking and you don't have the time, that's where plugins do you an injustice. It's not always the case, but sometimes it is. And sometimes you get a chance to play. That's great. But I've been in a lot of situations where a director's standing behind me, and if you don't get to where you need to go within a few clicks, they start getting antsy. They're kind of like toddlers sometimes, kind of like children. You have to put something in their hands to keep them busy while you're fiddling with the dials. So in order to keep them happy, you need to know exactly what you're doing, or you can dip into our library or another library like ours and use those and make people happier more quickly. And you look like a rock star. You saved a lot of time and money. But yeah, they work hand in hand, and plugins are great. But if you move from one station to another, you have to copy that plugin to another or reinstall the plugin. Or if you upgrade software, you have to reinstall. Ours are QuickTime. So it goes wherever you go. You can put it on a drive and take it with you. It works in everything as long as you have QuickTime. So they each have their pros and cons. It's you need a large hard drive to take our library with you, but you can take everything with you versus installing. A lot of facilities, if I walk into Disney, for example, and I try to install something, I think the IT department's going to tackle me to the ground. That's a no-no.
Yeah.
So they each have their place.
I want to go back to almost the start when you said that you shoot all these with a purpose.
Yeah.
Do you go out and shoot with a particular effect in mind to create a particular look, or are you shooting almost for inspiration and then come back and work with what you got? How are you approaching that?
I obsess over this stuff. I'm in the studio quite a bit. My wife does not. I have no life balance whatsoever. But so I have a whiteboard up here above this screen, and I've got thousands of ideas. And I'll say, okay, I want to test this particular idea, and I'll go into the studio and I'll play around. If it's where I want it to be, I'll pursue it. If it's not, I'll shelve it. I'll take my notes and I'll go into something else. But I always have something in mind. When I'll see something, or I'll see a billboard, or I'll see something at a theme park or whatever, and I'll just I really want to see if I can make that thing my own and go in and I'll play. And our studio is like a fun house. There's mirrors and lights and weird things that reflect, and it's you think I'm a crazy person. I could, if you walked into our studio, you'd think this person's a madman. So it's really just experimenting and finding that look and that feel that you're going for, and then trying to pursue it. And sometimes things evolve in the studio as well. You go in with an idea, and you have a happy accident, and you pursue that. But every single time I walk into the studio, it's for a reason.
You answered the next question I was going to ask you. Where do you get your inspiration? But it's just wherever you happen to see something that is a decent effect or that strikes you.
Yeah.
That's
it. Yeah. I mean, you'll have customers or clients say, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and then you'll go try to find a solution for that. But you'll also just be, walking in the park and look at a lake and see a light reflection off a lake and go, "I could recreate that and make that a transition," and go back to the studio and tweak until now all of a sudden I have these really cool organic transitions just based off seeing a reflection in the lake. So you find inspiration pretty much anywhere.
All right, so it's that part of the show where we get down to the pricing and
Okay.
availability. How does this all work?
Well, the cool thing is we offer 200 4K effects absolutely free. If you go to 4kfree.com, and they're straight from our library, they're not watermarked. You can use them in whatever you want. They're 100% royalty free. You can use them in any private or public project that you want. This way, two things. One, you can experiment with what 4K actually feels like. So it's not scary at all, but some people are afraid. And two, you get to try our library absolutely free, no questions asked, no strings attached. So that's free, and everything. So it goes everything from free to our packs start at $79, and depending upon what you want, you can get the entire library. I think right now you can get the entire library on sale for something like $19.99, and that's 4K. And it's tiered. We have 2K, 4K, and 5K. So if you want the 2K, it's cheaper than that. I believe it's like $8.99, and we're always running a sale. Like we have a sale right now for 50% off because it's our 6th year in business, so we're doing a big celebration. So everything from free to $79 a pack up to $19.99 for everything, and that's a little over 10,000 effects. So if you pay $1,900, you're getting something in the neighborhood of like 8 terabytes, 10 terabytes of stock footage. So I mean, it's huge.
Let's talk about the 4K for a second, because we didn't touch on that. Does this create any issues for pulling it into, say, something as simple as an iMovie project?
Not really. The Mac architecture flies. Everything we offer is in ProRes. So if you're on the Mac, which would be an iMovie, everything just screams. If you're on an old laptop and maybe on Windows or something, it might chug a little bit. But I put our 4K files on some pretty archaic equipment, and it seems to do just fine because it's all based on the ProRes architecture. But no, and that's the reason why I really want people to try it. Is there's so much stigma about 4K, like, oh, I'll never need it, or whatever it happens to be. The great thing is if you use our effects in 4K and you're working in HD, you can now size and reposition and rotate and scale, and you make your effects your own because you have so much latitude. I mean, it's 3,840 pixels or higher, depending upon which version of our effects you're getting in a 1920 timeline. So you're talking so much more latitude where you can reposition and scale and rotate, and because they're ProRes, you can change the color and do everything super simply. So no, I have not run on a Mac recently that the 4K has done anything but just scream.
But you also said you have some at 5K as well.
I do. Now 5K, you're going to need some faster drives. If you're using a single internal drive or like a USB 3 hard drive, regular plugged in, it's going to stutter a little bit because 5K is massive.
Right.
It's also not for the average person though. I don't think if you're shooting your kid playing a soccer match, you're going to buy stuff in 5K. Maybe you might.
Yeah, there might be that one effect that when you say stutter, you're talking about the playback while you're editing. In other words, once you render it out,
it's fine. Yeah,
it may take forever to render, but
so far we've put it through the ringer. It's pretty good. Because it's ProRes. If you were to do like an MP4 at 5K or something like that, or something heavily compressed at 5K, that would be an issue. But because we stay in ProRes, we're able to do pretty well.
What are you shooting this with?
Right now it's on, we shoot everything on an Epic. So everything I do is a Red Epic, and it gets converted from Red Raw to ProRes. And then our workflow is pretty much ProRes until we deliver.
Interesting. Where do we go to let people sample some of the free stuff and maybe buy some of the other stuff and help keep your work-life balance unbalanced?
You can get anything. You can get 200 of our effects absolutely free at 4kfree.com, and that's 4K. You can also go to budgetvfx.com and get a bunch of our effects in HD if you want to, and it's absolutely free as well. And then, of course, you can go to our main website, rampantdesigntools.com, and you can buy anything you want or sample anything you want, and you can see all of our tutorials there as well.
Sean, it's always good to talk to someone else that's a little bit obsessive. We talk to a lot of those people for some reason. I think it's like water. It all seeks and finds its own level.
Absolutely.
So, obviously, people can find you on your website. How about on the social networks? Any presences there?
Oh, yeah. Twitter is Rampant Design. Facebook is Rampant Media. And Instagram is Rampant Design.
Great. I bet there's some interesting things on the Instagram.
Yeah, we try to post unique things and our travels and in the studio, and it's always fun.
Great. It's good to talk to you. Thanks for
Thanks
for explaining it and maybe opening some of us up to making our projects just a little more sophisticated.
Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate you having me.
Well, we'll do it again.
All right.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I'm going to go play. How about you? Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting MacVoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.